Hello, this is Natalie Wrighton with SportsbookReview.com, and we are continuing our series of segments on the legalization on gambling within individual states in the US with an interview with Californian State Senator Roderick Wright, who has recently introduced two bills in California, one that would legalize sports betting in casinos in California, and the other that is focused on online gaming. So you're actually going to try and amend the Constitution?
Negative. We're going to play within what is allowed by the Constitution.
Okay. I think I read an article where they said that you were going to try and amend the Constitution, which is not what they're going to do in New Jersey. They're not amending the Constitution at all.
Well, no, actually, again, New Jersey did amend their Constitution to allow sports betting because their Constitution expressly forbid them doing it. And so when they tried to go to the Supreme Court said they didn't have standing because their Constitution didn't allow, nor did they have a statute to allow it. So they have since gone back, amended the Constitution, and created a statute, and the governor has since signed the statute. So they're ready to go.
Okay. And what do you think are the chances that these bills will actually become law? And who or what are the entities that are against it?
I think we have a good shot on the sports bet. That's a new one, and thus far there's not much opposition. On the internet, again, when we started off, everybody hated it. And now we're down to where the majority of people like it. I mean, we're, kind of sort of as we do in the legislative process. I mean, we have people that are making recommendations around the edges, but on balance, most people see it as something that we ought to do.
Right. So talking about sports betting, perhaps you can clarify a bit because people are still a little confused. Current federal law, as far as I'm aware, prohibits sports betting under the Professional Amateur Sports Protection Act from 1992, but makes exceptions for Montana, Oregon, Delaware, and Nevada. So in light on that, how's it working with California? You're not in any of those four states. Are you going to have to challenge that law?
Well, here's what happened. In the New Jersey action before, they are seeking to challenge the constitutionality of the 1992 federal law. There's also, as you may know, a move in the federal government to extend what the 1992 law said was that states had a period of time to enact a sports betting ordinance. And those four states were the ones that did that prior to the within the window that was provided in the 1992 law. Well, many of us feel that the window was too short, and more importantly, that it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution, and therefore other states should be allowed at their discretion to have a sports book.
Right. So states like California and all states except those four that I mentioned, they can't just decide to allow sports betting. They're going to have to challenge the federal law.
Exactly. But the way the federal government works here is that if you don't have a statute in place, then you can't challenge. So it's kind of the chicken and egg question.
Right.
If you don't have a statute, then you can't make the challenge. And if you don't make the challenge, then you can't get the game. So you've got to make an effort to enact the statute and then have the federal government tell you that it's illegal, and then you end up in court. Now, in our case, New Jersey will be in front of us.
Yes.
So so to take a sports analogy, we're going to be the tailback following New Jersey through the hole.
Right. So basically what you're saying is that when a state or New Jersey legalizes sports betting, it's not that sports betting becomes legal right then and there. It's basically the first step by challenging the federal government, is what you're saying.
Right. And, technically, you would have the federal government would take you to federal court. And what may well happen is, again, because it's a state, it moves through fairly quickly, so it could very easily move directly to the Supreme Court because it's the federal government suing a state, and those matters are resolved in the Supreme Court. We believe that New Jersey will prevail, and we would prevail under the same ruling that prevailed for them. Now, in an effort to try to preserve the statute at the federal level, there's a congressman who's introduced a statute that would extend the deadline.
Right. So as someone who is on the front line of this struggle, what do you see as the prospect for sports betting in the next, say, 5 or 10 years in the United States?
Beyond those 4 states, I see it as very high. Again, a lot of states, I mean, you figure you probably will have some states that will opt not to participate, and you'll have some states that will. I mean, so it would be at the discretion of the state. Historically, gaming in the United States has been something that has been relegated to state authority. The idea that the federal government came up with the law in the first place kind of flew in the face of what had been the standard practice of what we've been doing with gaming and alcohol and other kinds of things.
So who are the people that are against the bill? Do you anticipate the NFL giving you any pressure?
Not yet. I mean, they were not, to my knowledge, active in New Jersey.
Right. So who are the entities in California that are against these bills?
So far, nobody on the Sportsbook.
I've heard, though, that the Indian tribes are not happy with it.
No, in fact, the Indian tribes are all happy as claims because California law says that whatever is legal, well, actually, the federal law says that whatever is legal in the state, they're able to do it. And they're able to do it without a compact or having to pay any tax on it.
Oh, okay. I thought I read somewhere that they were against this, as it was taking revenue away from them if California was able to legalize.
We're confusing the concerns that they had about internet gaming with Sportsbook. In the internet gaming side, they do have some concerns, but on the Sportsbook, they would be able to fully participate.
Okay, yes.
Because again, remember, in the Sportsbook, there still is in place the Wire Act, which does not allow you to do sports online. So our law, just as that would be clear in New Jersey, you'd have to go to the facility in order to play.
Just reading here, it says that the bill won't likely trouble tribes because they still have exclusivity rights for slots and blackjack.
Correct. This will not impact the casino games. And remember, the Constitution of California specifically says that the only people who can do those games are Indian casinos on the reservation.
There's an explicit law against online betting in only 3 states, Nevada, Louisiana, and California. So does that impact you?
Well, actually, we don't have a law in California explicitly against online betting. In fact, online betting is legal in California now. We only do it, though, in horse racing, in a thing we call advanced deposit wagering. But that's done online in California right now. I don't know relative to Louisiana and the other states you mentioned, but our ADW system has been in place for a number of years, and last year we amended that to allow exchange wagering online relative to horse racing.
Okay.
But the federal government had the preemption on online, but it never was explicit. What the federal government attempted to say was that you couldn't use credit cards as a function of how you made the bet. So even if you look at what took place on when the 4 big guys of 3 or 4 were busted, they were not busted for violating the Wire Act. It was money laundering because they were attempting to pass the accounts through shell accounts. So, you know, your credit card would say you're buying flowers or something.
Yeah.
When you make a credit card transaction, there's a number code that shows up that represents what specifically you were buying. Gambling has its own code. And again, you can't use your credit card per se for an online gambling purchase. Now, you can actually use different credit cards for different kinds of things, but for an online business that gets dicey. That's what kind of sort of is kind of the rub.
So how will all this work? If online gambling does get passed, will the state of California sell licenses to operators, or will they contract it out?
Yes, we will. And we will, in effect, sell licenses to people and let them run it, and we'll get a piece of the action.
Okay, so let's just say this does pass online. How will that work in terms of moving money? How will you prevent someone from a different state getting money into California playing in their state?
UEJA, the law that enables the states to do this, one of the requirements, and it's not that complicated to do, is that the online provider of the game would have to verify the identity of the player and ensure that he's resident of California.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not real hard because you have to verify who he is and you have to verify where he lives. In effect, you would apply for your gambling permit with the operator of the game. So it's not real. I mean, that's actually the least complicated of the things you have to worry about.
Before we end this interview, Senator Wright, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I mean, this is moving very quickly, and it's not. I mean, it's moving from the standpoint that as you go forward, technology changes things. You know, and again, when we first started this 3 years ago on the internet side, you know, there were a number of people who were opposed, and their opposition largely ranged from that they didn't want competition or they feared that it would adversely impact their brick and mortar facility. You know, and as a matter of fact, as I've told them, it could. The challenge is that you don't want to be the person standing, you know, in the middle of the road to block technology.
Yeah.
I mean, that road, there's a lot of roadkill on that highway, and you don't want to join that. And, you know, what I've said to our incumbent gaming interests is that you just want to get in the game, you know, rather than try to block, because, I mean, right now, even though there is no California operation, California is one of the largest and most lucrative online gaming markets in the world right now, even without a statute. So the only person not benefiting are the people of California who are watching this money get exported out by the boatload, for which we receive no benefit. And when there are discrepancies about who won and where your money is, we have no ability to protect the California consumer. So the idea is, A, we would get a piece of the action, and B, we would have a better control over protecting California consumers.
Thank you, Senator Wright, for joining us today. This is Natalie Rydstrom for Sportsbook Review.